forward the link off to your colleagues, please do so. I think we're just about ready to get started. So the topic today, next generation firewalls, what are they and do they fit my business? I'm Rob Collins, the Senior Systems Engineer for Asia Pacific for Watchguard. So not too much to cover, but the content itself is quite in-depth. So we're going to introduce and compare next generation firewall and unified threat management. We're going to look at some of the features that they offer and how they've come about into the marketplace. And just very briefly, we'll look at whether they fit my business, my school, my charity, my hospital, my factory, whatever it needs to be. So both next generation firewall and unified threat management are essentially the results of a consolidation of technology. We've seen over the past discrete sound cards, network cards, video cards, have all been integrated into motherboards, and now you can buy a motherboard with everything on it for under $100. The different PC components have been integrated into a laptop, and we see GPSs, cameras, and phone technology now integrated into the smartphone. In fact, the MP3 players could be included in that as well. So as technology comes to market, it's very specialized, very niche, and it addresses a requirement at that point in time. But over the years, we tend to find that technology gets commoditized and standardized and included in other products. So back in October 2009, Gartner released a paper defining the next generation firewall. And they defined it as the requirements, rather, were that separate firewalls and intrusion prevention appliances resulted in higher costs and not really any increase in security over the optimized combined platforms. They also found that stateful packet filtering and limited application awareness offered by the first generation firewalls weren't really effective in dealing with emerging threats. They also summarized that next generation firewalls are most effective when working in conjunction with other layers of security controls. So what is a next generation firewall? Well, they define it as a wire-speed integrated network platform that performs deep inspection of traffic and blocking of attacks. And to that, it must have some of the standard first-generation firewall capabilities. So it must still be a firewall. It must offer packet filtering, network address translation, stateful packet inspection, VPNs, and so on. It should also have an integrated intrusion prevention system. So no separate consoles, one for the firewall, one for the IPS, like we saw, say, on the early ASA and PIX models, but they're separate IPS modules. Application awareness is probably the key focus of next generation firewalls, and it's supposed to be independent of port and protocol. As we see a lot of traffic now using HTTP and HTTPS, it's not sufficient anymore to just allow or deny based on ports and protocols. We need to allow port 80 and we need to allow HTTP, but do we necessarily need to allow Facebook chat facility or Skype file transfers? They also refer to something known as extra firewall intelligence. So the use of information from outside sources to make improved blocking decisions. And by that, they're referring to things like user databases, so making the firewall user aware, but also possibly external threat intelligence. The next generation firewall should also support upgrade paths, and I'm not talking about firmware upgrades, but the ability to plug in new techniques to address future threats. I think the current crop of, I guess, properly defined or companies that market themselves as next generation firewalls probably lack this proper upgrade path at this stage. But you'll see with UTM and with Watchguard's XTM, the upgrade path is built into the product, and I'll talk about how Watchguard has made some of these upgrades over the years. So what else did Gartner say in that document? Well, they said that next generation firewall is not unified threat management. Now, why would they say that? Well, technically, they say that while UTMs include first generation firewall and IPS functions, they do not provide the application awareness functions and are not generally integrated single engine products. So that was probably true back in October 2009, but the market's moved very quickly towards consumerization of next generation firewall, and we now see almost every UTM vendor offering application awareness. So that's not a true statement anymore. But politically, the term unified threat management was coined by Charles Kalogi in 2003, and he's an IDC analyst, which is obviously in competition with Gartner, so they prefer not to use the term unified threat management if they can get away with it. As a summary, it's all about marketing. Next generation firewall is a subset of UTM because it was considered that UTM wasn't sufficient at the time. But we could also say that UTM is a superset of next generation firewall. So it's all about the marketing. So the question is, can a unified threat management device be a next generation firewall? Well, we say that a Watchguard XDM can. So the requirements that I outlined, being a standard first generation firewall, having integrated IPS, application awareness, extra firewall intelligence, and upgrade paths, I'll demonstrate each of those in turn on the actual Watchguard console itself. So if we're talking about default firewall or standard firewall protection, on the Watchguard we have a stateful packet inspection. We've been doing that for many years. We also have quite strong default packet handling. So we see here things like spoofing attacks, port space probes, address space probes. These aren't just dropped, but theirs are blocked. So we recognize that this is a discovery mechanism, and we block the person from discovering any further once we recognize that. Of course, we offer standard network address translation. So by default, we NAT all the RFC 1918 private addresses. We also offer standard port forwarding and one-to-one NAT. For VPN technology, we offer industry standard IPsec VPN, and you'll find that Watchguard is compatible with just about every other vendor on the market as far as creating VPN tunnels go. For mobile users, we also offer IPsec, PPTP, we have an SSL VPN client, L2TP, and those connectivity mechanisms are available for both laptops as well as Apple iOS and Android devices. We have helper apps to help the end user configure their VPNs. So we have, as mentioned, good standard firewall technology with VPNs. So that's a tick for the first box. What about integrated intrusion prevention? Again, we go back to our Watchguard device. And intrusion prevention here, it's just one of our subscription services that we offer in our devices. We offer two different scan modes, a fast scan where we just look at the first 20 packets of a connection with the assumption that an attack will usually happen straight away, or full scan mode where we look at every single packet. We offer 5 levels of threat level, and we can apply that to all of our firewall policies very simply from this one screen. Within a firewall rule itself, we also see it's just a checkbox. So it's fully integrated into the solution. So again, that's another tick for integrated intrusion prevention. Application awareness independent of port and protocol. One Watchguard customers that have been using our devices for over 10 years, and it's probably a lack of awareness on our behalf, but we've had application control on our devices now for a few years, and it can be made independent of port and protocol using our TCP UDP proxy. So let's have a look at how we'd achieve that. On our firewall rule set here, I have 3 TCP UDP proxies, one for the executives, one for our marketing department, and one for staff. And we see that the port is any to any. So the TCP UDP proxy is quite a smart proxy in that it's able to recognize HTTP, HTTPS, SIP, FTP, and other protocols and apply the appropriate controls. We don't need to know the port or the protocol itself because the proxy is able to work that out for us, and it's able to monitor all ports and all protocols. The application control for that is again just a simple tick box. So here we're looking at the staff application control policy, and if we look at how this is configured, we can see that we've got proxy bypass and tunnels are set to be dropped, peer-to-peer is set to be dropped, and we've also got Facebook set to be dropped. Part of the art of designing a good application control solution is how do you present over 2,500 application behaviors to the administrator and let them configure it easily. So we offer a few options. One we have is a select by category option. So you can see here I've got all my peer-to-peer set to drop. And this is a subscription service, so from time to time, as customers request it or as the market brings them to our attention, we can add new peer-to-peer clients or other software or other applications, and we make them available to our customers through a subscription. So generally every week or two it's updated. And if you have an entire category selected as drop here, for example, any new peer-to-peer applications will also automatically be set to drop. I could set my database to be allowed, and any new database applications will automatically be allowed because the category is defined. We also have a very simple to use search window. So I can just type in MSN and I presented with all the applications with MSN as part of their title. And we see here we can allow or deny login, allow or deny the ability to chat, allow or deny the ability to transfer files, allow or deny media, and allow or deny games. So complete control over the MSN instant messaging protocol. We again look at Facebook. We have the ability to allow or deny access to Facebook in general, the ability to log in, use the Facebook applications, the Facebook dating site, edit the profile. And we have different application control profiles for staff as compared to marketing. So for the marketing department, if I have a look at them, their Facebook is a little bit different. So they're denied from Facebook dating and they're denied the Facebook game, but they're allowed to do some other things. So the marketing department would typically be responsible for the corporate Facebook page, so they need that extra control. In normal Watchguard fashion, we have the ability to control select or shift select large numbers of applications and then use a global action to allow or deny those. So I've said the art is in making those thousands of application behaviors configurable in an easy way to the administrator. I'll come back to the extra firewall intelligence in a moment. So we can also place a tick next to application awareness independent of port and protocol, thanks to our TCP UDP proxy. Next we look at extra firewall intelligence. So here we're looking at external threat information, and also user awareness. Let's again look at the Watchguard console. So we see my to and from here is not referring to ports or anything like that, or IP addresses or interfaces. It's referring to an actual group. So in this case, the executives group, here the marketing group, and here the staff, the rest of the staff. And we can draw that information from an Active Directory or through Radius, any LDAP. There's also an on-box database. For Active Directory, we offer single sign-on. So through this user awareness and group awareness, we're able to create firewall rules based on users and groups rather than ports and protocols. So when we combine the TCP/UDP proxy with our user awareness and our application control, we get our next generation firewall functionality on the Watchguard XTM. Another of our external threat intelligence comes from a technology known as reputation-enabled defense. So Watchguard's reputation-enabled defense, we see here, will immediately block URLs that have a bad reputation. We can also bypass virus scanning for URLs that have a good reputation. It's not really necessary for everybody's Watchguard everywhere in the world to be scanning Google's style sheet every time somebody goes to Google. It's just a waste of CPU cycles. So this allows us to bypass virus scanning for sites that have a good reputation. But it's a dynamic reputation. It's always constantly striving to be neutral. It's only if somebody's Watchguard gives it the green light does the reputation improve, and it's only good for a few minutes. But at least we're only scanning Google's style sheet with somebody's Watchguard somewhere in the world once every 10 minutes or so. But if for some reason their style sheet got compromised, we'd see that very quickly. And depending on how long it takes them to clean the page up, it would eventually get a bad reputation. And we would deny access to that page. Reputation-enabled defense also draws threat information from a website called PhishTank, which has user-submitted phishing URLs, which are then vetted by the PhishTank website. We also draw threat information from a website called Malware Domain List. Again, it's user-submitted URLs that are known to be providing malware. We also draw intelligence from both AVG and Kaspersky, which are running on the XTM and XTS devices. So with 2 antivirus engines and 2 third-party feeds, you could say that we have a very good extra firewall intelligence. So we'll give that one a tick as well. In terms of upgrade paths, the extensible threat management terminology that Watchguard uses for its devices, the extensible component relates to the fact that we can add or remove or change the security subscriptions as we require. If you've been a Watchguard customer for many years, you'd know that we changed at one stage from Clam AV to AVG for our antivirus provider. We changed our IPS to a company called Broadweb. We've recently improved our anti-spam technology through MailShell. We're also looking at, and we're always talking to other parties that can provide software development kits for us that give the Watchguard best-in-class security. And using our extensible nature, we can offer that fairly rapidly. Probably the most major change we made recently was to the ability to offer the full WebSense URL filtering database on our devices. So it's now well over 120 categories and a cloud-based solution. So the extensible nature of the Watchguard XTM means that I can put a nice big green tick in there against the upgrade path. So yes, a UTM can be a next generation firewall. So if we go back to the traditional old packet filter, it was good, and they can still be very fast. They can be a good first line of defense for a data center. A next generation firewall with its firewalling capability, IPS and application control is certainly better than a standard firewall. And a UTM combining firewall, IPS and application control with content filtering, logging, antivirus, anti-spam, reputation services, user awareness and more is certainly the best technology that you can have all in one appliance. And these security technologies layer upon each other, and as each piece of traffic goes through the firewall, it's subjected to multiple layers of checking. It needs to pass the IPS, it needs to pass the antivirus, it needs to pass the reputation, it needs to pass the URL filtering, it needs to pass through the application control. We do many demonstrations, particularly at live conferences, where we show how difficult it is to get a particular attack through a WatchGuard. We need to turn off service after service after service after service before the attack can proceed. And through the advances, particularly in processing speed driven by companies like Intel, you don't have to sacrifice all these security services for performance anymore. We have UTMs that are capable of 10 gigabits per second with all services enabled. The sort of throughput performance that would have been unheard of back in October 2009 when Gartner happily said that a next generation firewall and the UTM are not the same thing. Now, Gartner is also responsible for something called the hype cycle. So we see here the hype cycle from 2011. And we see UTM here in the trough of disillusionment. Back in 2011, there was a few vendors around, and next generation firewalls were seen as the sexy new guy on the block. And so we see that it was up on the slope of enlightenment and everything was looking really good. Fast forward 1 year ahead, and we see that next generation firewalls haven't really moved that much, but all of a sudden UTM has caught right up. The hype that was next generation firewall has now gone away. People realize that essentially a next generation firewall is a standard firewall with a couple of extra features, or if you look at it another way, it's a UTM with pieces missing. So we see that UTM is now on the slope of enlightenment, and it's at this technology stage where many customers will start to review what they currently have and would look at implementing UTM or next generation firewalls. So no matter which way you look at it, we're combining multiple perimeter services into one box, either next generation firewall or UTM. The next generation firewall, we're looking at application control, IPS, and firewalling. With unified threat management, we see a lot more services. But there's many benefits to be had by combining these individual unique point solutions into a consolidated platform. So certainly there's cost savings. Just in hardware alone, our latest 800 series really does just sip at the power. The new chips provided by Intel are really power efficient. So rather than running 5 or 6 CPUs in individual appliances, it's all consolidated out to one fast CPU that's very power efficient. In licensing costs, you're only dealing with one company, one renewal. Maintenance and training, instead of having to send staff to 5 different training courses, it's just one training course. And we get higher security as well. With the single pane of glass management and common policies, it's easier to get your firewall policy right. The majority of breaches that happen are not due to smart hackers, they're almost always due to bad firewall policies, poorly configured security. If you can get the security configuration right because it's easy, you've got a better chance of defending yourself. So which one is right for me? Well, if you already have a URL filtering solution and content control and anti-spam and email security and gateway antivirus, Don't rely just on endpoint antivirus. It's not sufficient to have just one antivirus engine these days. If you already have reputation-based filtering, and if you're happy with all of those technologies, then a next-generation firewall is for you. Otherwise, consider unified threat management. So to answer the final question, will it fit my business? Both unified threat management and next generation firewall are extremely flexible technologies and offer a lot of security in one package. They're ideally suited to distributed enterprise. The ability to have just basic firewall and VPN functions on your branch devices and have full UTM subscriptions on your head office devices gives you a lot of flexibility around your network. Watchguard offers a lot of distributed enterprise management tools and even the ability for the firewalls to configure themselves when they have an internet connection, what we call rapid deploy. We're also suited to small business. We have devices that are suitable for as little as 10 employees. Medium business, large enterprise. We have devices that can cater for well over 10,000 employees. In education, we have a lot of schools as good customers. We're able to enforce the safe search for YouTube and many search engines. URL filtering looks at the entire URL, not just a domain. So we're able to tell the difference between a regular Wikipedia page and a Wikipedia page for a porn star, for example. In health, we have white papers explaining how we're able to help out with privacy compliance and HIPAA. And there's many other opportunities for a UTM or a next generation firewall to fit into your business. The best thing you can do is talk to Watchguard. Let us know about your business and what your requirements are, what you already have, what could be consolidated, and we're able to provide you with a solution. So I'll take some questions now, if there are any.
There is. Is there any planned hardware architecture change to address lower latency or higher throughputs using multiple features?
We've just recently refreshed the 8 series, so that's now known as the 800 series, and also the 1050 and 2050 are in the process of being replaced with the 1500 and a 2500 series. Latency-wise, we're only talking usually fractions of milliseconds. And throughput, as I said, we have the 2520 is probably one of the fastest 1RU firewalls on the market at 35 gigabits a second for packet filter throughput. And it doesn't drop much below 10 gigabits a second, even when all services are enabled. So certainly if customers require even larger devices than that, then please talk to us. We're always happy to try and accommodate.
Yep. The next question is, in your example, each user group was created on the Watchguard box. Can you use AD user groups, and can we directly import AD users to relevant policy?
So yes, we can certainly work with Active Directory user groups, and with single sign-on, then the users just need to sign onto their computers once, and then the Watchguard is able to pick up their username and what groups they're a member of. And then it's just a matter of creating firewall policies in the same manner of creating firebox groups, but also just using AD groups. So I don't have any examples at the moment, but certainly that's a technology we can. We work with Active Directory and the majority of our customers actually.
Okay. The next question is, can we block Google Chat in application control?
I'll have a quick look at the policy here. So we see Google Talk here as one of the applications. So yes, we're able to block Google Talk.
Okay. Another question is, while enabling IPS, many customer faces the issue of latency when browsing. Is that right? Or is not something that has an issue?
It's not something I've ever noticed, and I have IPS enabled at most of, or almost all my customers actually. I've never noticed IPS introduce much latency. At least now with the option of the fast scan, if you do find that turning on IPS introduces some latency, the fast scan will only introduce that latency on the first 20 packets of a connection. Again, most regular users wouldn't notice an extra 3 or 4 milliseconds of latency. It's unusual to even notice that.
Good. One more question. What is distributed enterprise?
A distributed enterprise is an enterprise that has a large headquarters or a medium-sized headquarters, such as a convenience store chain, and then it has many stores distributed around a large geographic area. So we have large convenience store customers, pharmacies, retail. We have quite a large number of what we call distributed enterprise customers.
Okay. Two more questions to go. Can we block Google Play? Need to block user download app? If we can't, can you show how is it done?
So Google Play is not one I'm totally familiar with, but yeah, if you just make a support request on Watchguard, we'd be able to add the Google Play to the application control in the next update. As a subscription service, it's very easy to add new applications in there. I don't see Google Play in this list here, so it would be one we would have to add in.
Okay. Next question: can we block Gmail in inbuilt chat?
So that's the same as the Google Talk. They both communicate the same way. So the answer is yes. We refer to it as Google Talk, but essentially that's all forms of Google Instant Messaging.
Okay. Next question: what model of XTM are the next generation firewalls?
Right. So we offer different licensing depending on which models you look at. So our entry-level 2 series, the next one up, the 3 series and the 5 series, you can make them a next-generation firewall by buying the live security IPS application control signature sets. When it comes to the 8 series and above, we offer a special next-generation firewall bundle where we include the hardware, support, IPS, and application control, all as one bundle at a special price.
Okay. Next question: if one of the customer actually asks, we find lots of UTM. How do you see future of UTM in enterprises?
I see a bright future for UTM and enterprises. Again, because the performance that's being offered to us by the hardware advances, we're now able to be deployed with all security services enabled, even in large enterprises, and supporting their network speeds. Previously, maybe going back 4 or 5 years, I wouldn't have attempted to install a UTM into a 10 gigabits per second network, but now I'd have no hesitation at all doing that. So I think the future of UTM and enterprise is quite bright.
Okay. Rob, do you still want to continue with the questions, or there's a few more to go?
Yeah, that all been good questions so far.
Okay, good. What is the latency when it scans an application? Does it a user-based license?
So none of the Watchguard devices have user-based licensing except for some of the VPN technologies. So we size a box up according to the size of your network, and then it doesn't matter if you've got 10 or 50 users. If the box is the right size, there's no extra charge on a per user basis. So again, it's just a matter of getting the box the right size.
Okay. Next question is, can we configure domain-based policies?
At this stage, it's a little bit limited, so we do have the option, for example, if I create a firewall rule here, and instead of referring to going to external, I can add in here a host name. So let's call it google.com.au, and you can see it enters the IP address. But that's only a point-in-time lookup. It is on our roadmap, so we look forward to seeing domain-based policies at some point in the future.
Okay, next question. Watchguard reporting. Can we monitor link-wise inbound, outbound usage?
Probably not really relevant to this topic, but yes, we can monitor interface usage. And where you have application control enabled for a policy, we're also able to monitor the application usage for that group of users, for example.
Okay. Next question, can XTM act as DNS server?
No, the Watchguard device won't act as a DNS server. We can forward DNS requests onto a DNS server, but typically you would want your own DNS server. Most customers usually use the integrated Microsoft DNS, then forward off to Internet DNS. But at this stage, no, we don't act as a DNS server specifically.
Okay. One more question. I have seen in your policy during demo that you use TCP-UDP policy and apply an application control policy for application awareness. How about on DNS policy? Do we need to have an application control policy also for DNS?
You don't need to. I've got it here as an example of probably what I'd consider extreme best practice. So I have configured a DNS application control policy which allows only DNS. Fortunately, Watchguard's DNS proxy is very tight in regards to enforcing the DNS protocol. So you can't use port 53 on a Watchguard, for example, to send emails or for a Trojan to communicate using IRC on the DNS ports. It's a common open port. It's a common problem for other firewalls. It's not a problem for us because we use a proxy rather than a packet filter. So having the application control as well, it's just an extreme example of best practice, but our DNS proxy is sufficiently strong enough and well crafted that non-DNS traffic would not be able to get past it.
Okay. One more question. Can we have individual bandwidth management per user group? Per user or per group?
You can. I mean, for example, what I could do here is I could say for my executives, actually I need to enable it first. I can guarantee my executives a certain amount of traffic, for example. So I'll create a traffic management policy. I'll call it my executives. And I'll allocate a certain amount of bandwidth for them. So they've now got guaranteed 1 meg of upload and up to 2 megs, and then for download between 2 and 4 meg. So yes, we can do bandwidth management on the groups.
Next question. If the IP changes continuously, what to do in a domain-based policy?
Right, so that's one of the limitations that I mentioned before. So at the moment, it does a lookup at that point in time, and it translates to IP addresses based on the current lookup. So that can change, so that's why domain-based firewall policies is on the roadmap.
Okay. Yep. Another question. What key challenges of enterprise does Watchguard address?
So I think mainly it's the consolidation of point appliances. So larger enterprises typically have a dedicated URL filtering proxy. They'll have dedicated IPS. They'll have firewalls. They'll have dedicated anti-spam solutions. And the ability to consolidate all of that into just a HA pair of WatchGuards mean that they get cost savings of running less hardware and the benefits of easy management, less training overhead, dealing with one company for renewals. So they're all the benefits that larger enterprises would enjoy, but also smaller enterprises as well.
Okay. Can we do proxy caching in XTM?
I'll say again.
Can we do proxy caching in XTM?
No, there's for a long time, WatchGuards have not used hard drives in their appliances, so there was nowhere to store cached data. We've always been able to work with external caching proxies. So if we look at the proxy action for HTTP, we've been able to use web caching servers that are external to the WatchGuard, but typically the WatchGuards only have a compact flash card and RAM, so there was never enough room to store the cached information. The benefit was that we didn't have any moving parts in our devices, so their reliability has always been rock solid. We now have hard drives in some of our higher-end appliances. They're not reliant for operation, but we can certainly start to think about using them for caching. Typically, the benefits of caching these days are very small. The dynamic nature of the internet and the large amount of SSL traffic, you'll find caching benefits down around about 5 to 10%, and often they cause more problems than they solve, especially when a user rings up the IT and says, I'm looking at yesterday's newspaper because it's come from the web cache rather than fresh from the website. They tend to cause a lot of problems in that regard. So I'm not a fan of them anymore. The internet's become quite cheap and quite dynamic, so the benefits are very small these days.
Okay. How to decide the good and bad reputation for URLs?
Yeah, I had explained that at some length. So we use threat information from AVG scanning, from Kaspersky scanning, from the website fishtank.com, and also from the website malwaredomainlist.com. So between those four sources, we're able to determine the reputation. There's obviously some logic behind it that's internal to WatchGuard as to how we calculate it. But obviously, the more malware we see from a particular URL, the higher the reputation. If I try and download the iCar virus about 4 or 5 times, for example, the URL where I download the iCar virus from will suddenly have a bad reputation, and I'll no longer be able to download it because the reputation-enabled defense will be blocking it.
Next question, is there a way to identify the top talkers and top listeners on WatchGuard UTM?
Yeah, we have a technology called HostWatch that's been there for a long time, and you can sort the users by bandwidth and also by the amount of data that's been downloaded. We also have historical reporting, so the logging and report server is free when you buy a WatchGuard, and there's some top applications, top users, top bandwidth, top categories, various reports like that as part of that solution. And we also have some exciting reporting functionality coming in our roadmap quite soon. I'm pretty excited about it. It will give a very easy overview of who is using my bandwidth at this point in time. It will answer that question very, very quickly.
Okay, the next question, what sort of reports can we generate for mailing if the mail server is in a data center and we are just using SMTP and POP3 in XTM?
That probably sounds more like a configuration question than anything, so I might skip that one for now.
Okay, next question, how to terminate the running download using HostWatch?
If the connection's already there, you can right-click it and terminate.
Okay.
We're obviously getting very specific with our questions now, and we're probably a bit off track as far as next generation firewalls go. If you've got very specific questions about how to drive a WatchGuard, then talk to your local WatchGuard sales engineer or our technical support.
Yeah. I think this question will probably be quite good to answer. IPv4 and IPv6 firewall policies, can they be mixed and managed in a console?
Yeah. So we have a fairly decent amount